Mock Draft Mania here at the Locked On Podcast Network. I made our first pick in the Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special, and now I'm going to make the rest. That's coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this episode of Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day every day. And don't forget that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you're getting this podcast. And you can continue this conversation with me by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to sign up today. You will get 2 weeks free. And from there, you'll get news analysis, one-on-one information, insight, bonus content from me via text message. No hashtags, no filters, no apps, none of that nonsense. No selling your phone number, so no telemarketers or any of that craziness. Just one-on-one conversations. You text me, I text you. We all have a good time. Again, join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to do that today. In fact, today, as we're recording this episode on Thursday, I will be headed out shortly to go see Adam Peters, general manager of the Washington Commanders, for his pre-draft press conference. And I will be texting my insiders as we are there in Ashburn, Virginia. I'm David Harrison, credential member of the media covering the Washington Commanders for Sports Illustrated's FanNation, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers. And as always, everydayers, I appreciate your continued support for the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. And I'm going to admit, I've got a competitive side, and as a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on the classic Monopoly. Join your friends, my friends, and download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play. On today's episode, we are finishing what we started as the Locked On Podcast Network launched our annual mock draft special Wednesday night. The episode where I make our pick is up here on the channel, so you can find it right here where you're listening to this very episode. But first, let's talk about the trades, and let's talk about the first round surprises, and then let's finish off this mock draft. We're doing a full 7 rounds here of Washington Commanders. It's not Monday, but it is mock draft week here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So I'm going to pull up the first round spreadsheet here, and no surprises, right? First overall pick, quarterback Caleb Williams, going to the Chicago Bears. And yes, I did take Jaden Daniels out of LSU. Probably not a big surprise to the everydayers. I think we've been talking about this for quite some time. You can hear my reasoning for it, and you can hear our Locked On NFL Draft, Peacock and Williamson. We got a lot of insight and information, some reactions. Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings weighed in pretty strongly with his opinion on my pick. So if you want to hear Luke Braun, one of the hosts of Locked On NFL, he gave some pretty strong words about the selection that I make. Drake May did go number 3 to the New England Patriots, and then the Minnesota Vikings were able to, speaking of Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings, he was able to execute a trade with Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals to move up to number 4 for the Vikings and take J.J. McCarthy, the quarterback. So Los Angeles Chargers, just like Coach Harbaugh said in Orlando, basically got the first pick of the NFL draft if you're not looking at quarterback, because at number 5, he takes the first non-quarterback. It's wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. out of Ohio State. I know some Commanders fans want to see the Commanders take him instead of going quarterback or even tackle. The first tackle off the board was Joe Alt. He goes number 7 to the Tennessee Titans. Again, out of Notre Dame. So looking at the rest of the first round, there were some trades. I will tell you right now, I was not able to trade back into the first round, but guys, it was not without effort. Okay. I tried to strike up a deal, and this will make some people happy. This will make some people angry, but I was in talks with the Arizona Cardinals to get both of their first round picks to move back from number 2 to number 4. And for me, I was like, you know what? And I've said it before here on the show every day, as you know this, I like Jaden Daniels the most for this team out of these 3 remaining quarterbacks, Jaden, Drake, and JJ. But I do feel like this coaching staff, you do the right things, you put the right players in place, you put the right schemes and the coaching in place. I think they can win with any of these 3 quarterbacks, Jaden, Drake, or JJ. I think you can win with all 3 of them. So trading back to number 4, potentially getting JJ McCarthy out of Michigan instead of Jaden Daniels or Drake May. To me, I was like, you know what? If I can go ahead and get another first round pick from the Arizona Cardinals, then potentially get that tackle. Probably would still want to trade up from that spot, being in the late 20 or being in the 20 range, but wasn't able to make that happen. So from there, I turned my sights to trading back into the first round. And with the Arizona Cardinals, don't get me wrong, there were offers made, but for me, it just wasn't enough to warrant go ahead and dropping back that far. So you have to trust me that I made the right decision there and went with Jaden instead of making that trade. But I did try to trade up. Okay, I think the highest that I tried to trade up was number 16. We've talked about the number 16 overall pick with the Seattle Seahawks. I was in talks with host Locked On Seahawks Corbin Smith for that number 16 pick. He acknowledged that the Seahawks do have that history of trading back, but he did not want to leave the first round. I didn't want to give him the 2025 first rounder for Washington, so he ends up sticking and picking. He takes offensive lineman Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon. And if you listen to our episode with Dane Brugler of The Athletic last week, he mentioned that he makes Jackson Powers Johnson, not because of talent, but more so because of position value, might be the guy that's projected in the first round that actually ends up falling to day two. Here he goes number 16 to the Seattle Seahawks after my failed attempts to make a trade. I reached out to the Miami Dolphins. They said that if their preferred edge, one of their two preferred edge rushers was not on the board, they would trade back. Unfortunately for us, Jared Verse of Florida State was one of those two preferred edge rushers. He was available, so that deal fell through. It was lined up. It just fell through because his guy was there. Same thing happened at number 25. Green Bay Packers. Host Locked On Packers, Peter Bukowski, and I had a deal in place. The terms were agreed to. The handshake was made. All I needed was Cooper DeJean to not be available at number 25. Unfortunately, Cooper DeJean was available at number 25. So the Green Bay Packers made that pick instead of giving it to me. And because of that, I was unable to move up the board before Amarius Mims, Kingsley Suamataia, and Tyler Guyton all came off the board at 30, 31, and 32. And yes, I reached out to the Ravens. I reached out to the Niners. I reached out to the Chiefs, but they all knew what I wanted. They knew I wanted to tackle, and so did they. So they took those tackles. So, so a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 offensive tackles, 7 offensive tackles come off the board in the first round. That's painful. But believe me, guys, it was not without effort. Joe Alt comes off the board first, followed by Olu Fashanu, who goes to the New York Jets, followed by Talisi Fuaga, who goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers at 20. J.C. Latham to the Cowboys at 24. So not being able to jump ahead of them really hurt as well. Arizona Cardinals take Grant Barton. Again, he's listed as a tackle, but I think he's going to be a guard. Amarius Mims goes to the Ravens. Kingsley Suamataia goes to the San Francisco 49ers, and Tyler Guyton to the Kansas City Chiefs. That is how the first round unfolded in the Locked On NFL Draft mock draft. And that's not all 32 picks. If you want to hear all 32 of those picks, just head over to the Locked On Sports Today feed, and you can find that. You can find the episode again where I selected Jane Daniels number 2. It is an hour or so long episode, but if you only want to hear the Washington part of it, it comes up fairly quickly after the Chicago Bears do what we all expect the Chicago Bears to do, and that is make Caleb Williams the first pick of the 2024 NFL Draft. We are a week away from the actual draft happening. So if you don't like my pick, don't worry. Maybe Adam Peters will do you one better. But let's see if you like the rest of my picks, day 2 and day 3, and a conversation about how the Washington Commanders are handling their top 30 visits coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I have been told that I am a competitive person, and my fellow co-hosts on this network will tell you that when it comes to trying to get what I want, I can be very, very aggressive. Unfortunately, in the Locked On NFL mock draft world, I can't just bust into their draft vault and steal their draft picks. But if I go to Monopoly Go, I can do exactly that. So I have a competitive side. My competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of Monopoly. I'm sure you've heard of Monopoly Go. It's got over 150 million downloads as we speak today. It's a great twist on the classic game where you get hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. And the best part, like I said, is messing with my friends and families. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like the classic Monopoly game. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game, join your friends, download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. Thanks again for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day. Every day, make sure you come back tomorrow. We are speaking to Adam Peters, general manager of the Washington Commanders, and I'm unleashing something that's a little bit corny, but it's a little bit fun, and I can use a little bit of corniness and fun right now. So hopefully you roll along with it. I'm unveiling my 5 days of draft miss coming up on Friday following our press conference with Adam Peters. So come back for that tomorrow. Locked On NFL's mock draft went live April 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern time, streaming on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. You can find the ultimate six episode series and hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angles. You can find out what Locked On LSU's host thinks of my pick of Jaden Daniels. The Locked On NFL mock draft, again, streaming live on Locked On Sports Today and the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. So continuing on with the mock draft, right? So I took Jaden Daniels in round one. I tried, guys. Listen, we are allowed to leave after we make our pick, right? So for me, this thing started at like 8 o'clock at night, the night that we did this. So this wasn't broadcast live. It was recorded and then streamed live, right, to everybody. We did this at like 8 o'clock at night. So we started at 8 o'clock at night. So I made my pick, and this isn't like, the NFL draft. And if you watch it or listen to it, like, we're not sitting there while Brian Peacock and the draft guys do their reactions and all that stuff. We make our pick, we move on. So at 8:05, I'm picking, right? And I pretty much already knew once Caleb Williams goes, I'm taking Jane Daniels. So it was a very quick process. From there, I waited until all 32 picks, all the other, like, three other trades, like the Saints traded up at one point in time. I was getting very frustrated because, man, I want to trade so bad. And I'm watching these other trades go down. I'm like, this must be what some of these GMs feel like sometimes, except much higher stakes and much more real. I stayed there the entire time. So give me credit where credit is due. If you're mad at me for not trading back up, like I said, I tried. I even actually offered to overpay one of those teams. Not super significantly, but significantly enough. Anyway, so we get to the second round. Since I couldn't trade up into the first round, we've got all of our day two picks. So let's make the most of these picks. Number 36, I am going offensive tackle Patrick Paul out of Houston. There's a late run on tackles. Like I said, Suamatia is already gone in the first round, and you figure the Patriots are likely to go tackle at number 34. So I think that takes Jordan Morgan off the board. Day two begins. Jordan Morgan is certainly the top tackle on the board. I think he's gone at number 34. So number 36, we go Patrick Paul. And look, Patrick Paul is a true left tackle, great pass blocker, adequate run blocker, brother of Chris Paul. That's a bonus. That's not really an evaluation point, right? But it's certainly a bonus. He's got an NFL brother waiting to welcome him in and going to show him the ropes and help keep him on the straight and narrow, right? Started 3 games as a freshman as a left tackle in Houston. That's a positive. He's a very athletic tackle. He can move. He's got long arms and moves to the second level well. And every day, if you remember our tape study conversations and insiders, if you watch the tape studies of the offensive line that we did, there was a trend in the guys that the Washington Commanders brought in this offseason for their offensive line, guys that can move and get to the second level. So Patrick Paul fits that. And if he gets drafted, I'm going to do that a lot. I feel like I'm going to mix up their two names. I really hope I don't do that often, but I feel like I'm going to. So Patrick Paul, number 36, we get our offensive tackle. Number 40, we come back and we go cornerback TJ Tampa out of Iowa State. And this guy is really interesting. His evaluations are kind of all over the board. I've even seen him slip to day 3 in some mock drafts. I think that's a little crazy. I think maybe end of second round is the latest he'll go. But here I take him at number 40. I thought about an edge here, but with the amount of new faces already on that defensive line, I feel like Washington's likely going to add to the corner. I know they've added some cornerback depth as well, but I feel like the corners they added not as significant as the edge rushers they added, if that makes sense. So I feel like corner is probably the move here. TJ is an outside corner. He's better in zone than he is man, but he's certainly good in both. Physical play style. If he doesn't get drafted here, if he doesn't get drafted highly, it's going to be because he can't be trusted to tackle on his own space. And I know that's been a big indicator by Dan Quinn, and I got it, and it made me hesitate. I can't lie. But I also kind of look at this. I'm like, if your linebackers aren't moving and covering, if your edge rushers aren't moving and covering to the point where your cornerback is on an island trying to make a tackle by himself often enough for it to matter, you got other problems. So I didn't view that as a big enough of a ding. Maybe Dan Quinn does. I don't know. But that's why I went with TJ Tampa. He's also got a special teams background, which to me shows that he's a guy who's willing to do whatever it takes to help his team. Third round. So that's our 2 second-round picks. Third round now, number 67. Come back, and the draft gods smiled upon me. Adisa Isaac, edge rusher out of Penn State, is available. You guys know, everydayers know, I'm a big fan of Adisa Isaac. I like his upside more than I think most people do. I actually kind of view him as a second-round type of guy. I will be very, very happy to get him here near the top of the third round. So I'm thrilled getting him there. He's a wide 9 specialist. You're going to see him lined up way outside the tackles. His IQ flashes on the screen, knows how to read guys, anticipate, set guys up. He's quick off the line. He is designed for an odd front rush linebacker type. So whether it's hand in the dirt or standing up, you want him outside that tackle. You want an odd front with their hands down, 1 guy, 2 guys, 3 guys, eating up some of those blocks and allow him to work one-on-one and try to set a guy up. He's a team captain at Penn State, really good motor. You're not going to see him quitting on plays very often. From there, I am making a trade. Okay. I could not make a trade in the first round. I'm going to make a trade here. And I'm looking at the Chicago Bears, who only have 4 picks in the entire NFL draft this year. Granted, 2 of those are first round picks, so they can do some damage with those picks, but they may also be looking to maximize the value of those picks. So I'm going to offer them my 2 late third rounders. I'm going to offer them number 78 and number 100, and I'm going to take back number 75 and number 122. So they end up with 2 third round picks instead of 1 third, 1 fourth. I get back into the 4th round while moving up 3 spots in the 3rd. So to me, it's a win-win. Chicago still only has 4 picks, but they're all top 100. I get back in the 4th round and I move up a little bit in the 3rd to take wide receiver Devontae Walker out of North Carolina. Not the biggest need on the board, especially because he's not a towering tall guy, 6'1.5". But it's not a not need, I think, right? I think you need some more competition in the receiver room. He's a vertical threat with a long frame. He's better in loose routes. So you got things like go routes, post routes, corners, over routes, not, hard cut type of routes. Solid contested catch guy, really kind of developed that part of his game late in his collegiate career, and he challenges corners with his stem. He knows how to use his release and stem to really manipulate cornerbacks. You really like that about his game. So that is our day 2 haul, right? So again, we only have the 2 picks now in the 3rd round instead of the 3 that we had. So 67, we go edge rusher Adisa Isaac. 75, we go wide receiver Devontae Walker. But again, we end up with some more day 3 picks. So day 3, we got 4 more picks to make. Let's get to those coming up next. And we'll talk about the interesting top 30 approach that Adam Peters and Dan Quinn have been taking on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Yahoo Finance. Wouldn't it be great if you could see all your investments and retirement accounts in one place? With Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend to your entire profile with confidence. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the #1 financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. Final segment here on Locked On Commanders. This mock draft mania, wrapping up our Locked On NFL mock draft special. Started with a quarterback, started with a whole lot of failed trade attempts, hit the 2nd round, hit the 3rd round. Now let's hit day 3, number 122 in our trade with the Chicago Bears. This is not an organic trade or organic pick. So if you're looking at it, you're like, wait, the Commanders don't have number 122. That is this mock draft trade that I executed with the Chicago Bears. Number 122, we're going tight end Cade Stover out of Ohio State in the 4th round. Receiving tight end, played defense previously, so he's got a little bit of that kind of knowledge. Shows flashes as a blocker that should improve with timing and with coaching. So allowing him to be a backup behind Zach Ertz, along with John Bates, Cole Turner, Armani Rogers. We'll see who makes the cut, who doesn't. Certainly a guy that has upside, kind of like this class is Travis Kelce. Not saying he's going to be Travis Kelce, calm down, but kind of has that underdog mentality, a little bit of a raw potential athlete that could be turned into something really good if given the right situation. Number 139, we're going wide receiver Johnny Wilson, talking about upside out of Florida State, 6'6". So we didn't get the tall guy in the beginning of the NFL draft. I know a lot of you wanted that, but we got the tall guy later. Better speed than he's given credit for, I think, especially long speed, and a good blocker. Shows that he's really willing to do the dirty work and willing to do what it takes to get his team the win. So at number 139, I am taking a risk on that guy. Number 152, we're going Edufuan Yolo Foshio out of Washington, linebacker. So we're adding a little bit of linebacker depth to develop behind Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, Jamin Davis, and we'll see what happens the rest of the way. Number 222, we're going back to the tackle well, man. We're getting Frank Crum out of Wyoming. He's not going to be a starter. He's not going to be a day 1 stud. He's going to be a developmental guy that we're going to bring up. But we got Trent Scott, Andrew Wiley. We got some older dudes on the offensive line, Cornelius Lucas, and we need that young guy to start developing right now. So that maybe year 2, year 3, see what kind of steps he takes, what kind of strides he makes. Certainly could be a guy that provides valuable depth, or you never know, could surprise you and become one of the next stars of the Washington Commanders. So that's our 7-round mock draft. We got a quarterback, a tackle, a corner, an edge, a wide receiver, a tight end, another receiver, a linebacker, and another tackle. Let me know what you think of that. Let me know where you would have gone different, and we'll see where Adam Peters wants to go different here coming up next weekend. Now, another conversation that was happening on Wednesday afternoon, was the approach that the Washington Commanders took about their top 30 visits. So they didn't have all 30 people in, but they did have 4 quarterbacks in at one time. And as part of those visits, they took those quarterbacks to Top Golf in Ashburn, Virginia. And so there's two parts of this conversation, right? And I had some insiders ask me specifically about this, so I decided to do this here on the show. So let's talk about the getting 4 guys in at one time. And I heard Florio and Chris Sims's take on it. I think it's ridiculous to be that ridiculous about it. To me, like, even if you don't like it, I have a real big problem when people who have never done that job or never done a job similarly to that field or to that expertise get overly demonstrative about their reactions, right? Like it's almost like the spoken word video version of clickbait, right? Like, Ryan Griffin is a back career backup quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, won a Super Bowl. So if the Washington Commanders were to sign him, and I wrote a headline that says Washington Commanders signed Super Bowl winning quarterback. All right, it's not wrong, right? But what did Ryan Griffin do? Don't be wrong. In the meeting rooms, all that stuff, valuable member of the team. Okay, obviously, but it's clickbait, right? Now, every title is clickbait. I've had that conversation with a few people in the comments here. Every title is designed to get you to want to click on what it is it's trying to sell. But the word clickbait is meant to be for stuff that is outlandish, right? And what Mike Florio and Chris Sims did to me is the talking equivalent, speaking equivalent of clickbait. Like, you're not actually that mad about this. You're not actually that mad about 4 quarterbacks coming in. It's not actually that ridiculous to have those 4 quarterbacks coming in. And you know what? Having them interacting with each other, even though they're not going to interact with each other again in your facility after that day, is not ridiculous at all, because you're talking about a leader of men. That's what you're drafting as in your quarterback, is a leader of men. And what you want to see is who draws the circle, who draws the crowd, right? That's what a leader does. At the end of the day, people resonate with the leader and they circle themselves around a leader. And guess what? All 4 of these guys can't be that guy. Someone is going to have their attention. Someone is going to have their people, the rest of those guys kind of tuning into them, syncing up with them. There's going to be that guy. Who was that guy? That is an important part of the equation, because these 4 quarterbacks, all of these quarterbacks, they're going to be tied together for the rest of their careers. So it's important to have that. Then you talk about the Top Golf thing. Look, they can't put them on the practice field. They can't run them through a combine workout. Okay. So what can you do? Put them in a competitive position. Play spades. Don't play poker because gambling laws, but play Monopoly. Play Monopoly Go. I don't care what you play, but play something. That's the theory here. Play something. See how these guys go. Because guess what? Competitors, you're in a job interview. You understand that. You might be able to hide your toxic personality traits a little bit, but competition shows the true person. And you're either going to play really rough because you're trying to hide your personality, and that's going to show, or you're going to play really rough and show your personality, which may not be a good thing, or you're going to succeed and show your personality, which may or may not be a good thing, right? Plus, I mean, I'll tell you right now, I don't know what they did, but if I'm Adam Peters and Dan Quinn, I'm going to the Top Golf people. I'm like, hey, look, we got a very important thing going on here. We're going to rent out like this entire section or whatever, this level, whatever we're going to do. And here's what I need you to do. When Jaden orders the curly fries, bring him regular fries. When Drake orders the chocolate milkshake, bring him a strawberry. When, you know what I mean? Like, mess up their orders. If they're not wearing the greatest clothes in the world, spill a drink on them. I want to see how you treat everyday people. I want to see how you interact in the public. I want to see who you are as a human being. So I don't have a problem with it at all. Now, am I going to sit here and be like, this is exactly the way every team should be doing it? Not like, no, like there's many, many different ways to do this. But if the question is, can I make sense of why they did what they did? Yes, I can make sense of it. You get the 4 guys around. These are 4 leaders of men. All of these guys were the alpha dogs on their team. Who's the alpha dog among the alpha dogs? That's what you want to find out. Get as much of it as you can. Put them in a competitive environment. Find out who they are as a competitor. Are they the competitor that's just going to make enemies to win at no cost? Are they the competitor that's going to high five the competitor next to them as they're doing good because I can beat you without pushing you down? I'm just going to elevate myself, which means I'm going to elevate people around me. Find out who they are. And then you find out how they treat the public. And again, you might be able to fake the funk, man, for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour. But eventually, if you're just a D-bag, you're going to show it. So again, I see the reasoning for it. I don't have a problem with it. And then, oh yeah, by the way, there's also the potential of Josh Harris, his schedule. He's a pretty busy person. Only had time to meet with them the one day. So you go ahead and you make your owner happy. I got news for anybody who's got a problem with that. Every single business wants to make their owner happy. All right. I am the host of Locked On Commanders. My CEO is David Locke. I want to make David Locke happy. The owner of my network is Tegna. I want to make Tegna happy. So that's the nature of the business. Now, fortunately for me, it doesn't dictate what I say to you here on the show. And that is going to wrap up what I had to say on today's show. Coming up tomorrow again, you're going to hear from Adam Peters. I'm going to unveil my 5 days of draftness. Hopefully you come through for what is hopefully a fun experiment that I'm going to enact this year. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, just throw them in the YouTube comment section or text me directly after becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. Join subtext.com/Locked On Commanders. Don't forget, check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 live streaming sports channel on YouTube. And as always, thank you for coming through and seeing this episode of Locked On Commanders and making us your first listen or view today and every day. Every days, thanks for coming through on a regular basis like you do. Until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind. I'll see you next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.